July 16, 2026, and I've been posting these videos as a form of therapy in my recovery from the trauma of watching my little brother, Paul Cairns, 64, with Down syndrome, be locked away by the British Columbia New Democratic Party government, David Eby as leader, Nikki Sharma as Attorney General, and Sheila Malcolmson as the minister responsible for Paul's care. Paul was locked away from me, his last surviving family member and visitor, when I complained to the police after I discovered a secret and what I alleged to be a fraudulent and forged power of attorney in August of 2022. So they locked Paul away for 588 days. We were only allowed a 10-minute telephone call once a day. And once a week, and he begged me to visit him. He didn't understand what was going on. He thought he had done something wrong. And then I got an email from the government appointed my 82-year-old Catholic nun sister 4,000 kilometers away in Ontario as Paul's guardian. And I fought tooth and nail to restore his visits. I spent every penny I had, every penny I could borrow on medical reports and for filing fees. The Catholic Church, I estimate, spent at least $2 million on legal fees. They had two law firms working for them, Charles Gibson in Ottawa with an Ottawa law firm, and Casey Deanshaw, a lawyer working for Borden, the law firm of Borden, Ladner, Gervais. Remember those names, please, and never use those shyster, corrupt, and cruel law firms. Anyways, the Catholic Church spent about at least $2 million trying to uphold this fraudulent and forged power of attorney. I got an email from Casey Deanshaw, my sister's Vancouver lawyer, on April 15th of 2024, saying that Paul had had a stroke, but I could come and visit him at Burnaby Hospital. And I went and visited him. I was allowed a 10-minute visit per day, although I sat in the hospital for 10 to 12 hours a day. When the nun could see that Paul was recovering and he wasn't going to die, she flew in from North Bay, Ontario, and put Paul in a room where it was just her and him by themselves. During the 10 days that Paul survived, I got a telephone call from the Burnaby RCMP police saying that they had been ordered by their Ottawa Oversight Agency to reopen the investigation into the fraudulent and forged power of attorney. When I went to court the next morning, asking the judge to suspend the nun's authority guardianship over Paul pending the RCMP investigation, but we didn't get on. So the nun knew that I had been informed by the police that she was being investigated, and by the time I got back to the hospital, Paul was dead. When I walked into the room, the nun wouldn't look me in the eye. She just said, "Say goodbye to Paul, he's dying," through gritted teeth. I looked at Paul. He appeared to have already been killed. I believe that they did medical assistance in dying on him, that his treating doctor, Dr. Michael Baker, whom I've complained about to the coroner, to the College of Physicians and Surgeons, and to the Burnaby RCMP, did medical assistance in dying on Paul. So in Canada, people who are suffer from any kind of grievous bodily condition, they don't need to be dying, can be killed by their doctor. They're killed the same way that inmates are, that convicted murderers in the United States are killed by lethal injection. They're paralyzed, and then they're given a lethal injection. They're paralyzed so they can't change their mind or call out, and then they're given a lethal injection. So it's in 2025, the United States killed 43 people this way after a trial before a judge and a jury. Canada killed, under Mark Carney, our current Prime Minister, the most evil man on the planet. And people talk about rivals to Adolf Hitler, but honestly, he surpasses Adolf Hitler. He's the most evil man on the planet. And in the last year, under his supervision, 17,772 Canadians, mostly almost 100% white, Canadian-born citizens, innocent and vulnerable, disabled and poor, were executed extrajudicially by lethal injection as medical care in Canada. So I've been posting about this since I found out about it in 2021. And I try and post something every day. And I send a link to these videos to every single Canadian senator and to all the Conservative members of Parliament. In all of the years that I have been sending these videos, the only person that has ever responded to me is the Member of Parliament, Cheryl Gallant of Renfrew, Pembroke. And she spent a lot of time on the phone discussing this horrific euthanasia, eugenics, and genocide created by the Supreme Court of Canada. Now, my first question, I am a former psychologist for the government of British Columbia, then a federal prosecutor, then a family lawyer for 23 years. I worked for the current leader of the Conservative Party, British Columbia, Carrie Lynn Finlay, and then I went out on my own for many years. But my first question when I found out about this scheme of doctors killing patients as medical care is, well, how the hell did that happen? How the hell? I mean, you could imagine this. It's the equivalent of Amazon drivers going from delivering packages to delivering bombs. And you wonder, well, how the hell did they go from delivering packages to delivering bombs? So I looked into it, and what I discovered was is that the Supreme Court of Canada had made a decision against euthanasia in a case called Canada and Sue Rodriguez, where it said, no, it was not in the public interest for doctors to kill their patients, which seems self-evident and has for the last 40,000 years of civilization and of Neanderthals. The Neanderthals did not kill their elderly, ill, and dying members of their communities until the very end, when there was only a few of them left, and they killed and cannibalized their own. But so Canada had, in the Sue Rodriguez case, had considered in depth and detail the option of mercy killing or euthanasia, and said no. Then, with no change in the law whatsoever, no reason to change its mind, in February of 2015, it changed its decision and said, in response to an application brought by a non-governmental organization, a death cult, a ghoulish death cult called Death with Dignity. And they had put forward this woman who was already dead, named Kay Carter. She'd already gone to Switzerland and been killed by a doctor in Switzerland. So it was a moot case. There was no live issue before the Supreme Court of Canada, but in February of 2024, in February of 2015, the Supreme Court of Canada anonymously, which they usually do not do. So usually any court decision is written by a particular judge, and often there's dissents from other judges, but no, anonymously and unanimously, they decided to allow euthanasia, so for doctors paid by the government to kill Canadian citizens. And they said that they said there was a charter right to be killed by your government. If you can imagine anything more preposterous, ridiculous, or against every legal tradition in the Western civilization and the common law. They're just bizarre. And so I wondered, well, why the hell did they do that? That's an awfully strange decision. The woman was dead. And then they made this decision, and they gave Canada 1 year, 12 months, to come up with a system to make sure that the system was not abused or taken advantage of, or that vulnerable people were not injured. If you could, they gave the government of Canada 12 months to do something that in the history of human civilization has not been done in 40,000 years. which cannot be done because of human nature, of greed and the power of the state over the individual, and the pressure that can be brought to bear on individuals. All of the reasons why murder has been the most serious offense in the criminal code, and a hanging offense until 1999. So for a doctor did the same thing in 1999, a medical doctor who was in the army, so his military staff did exactly the same thing in 1999, they would have been hanged. So, and I thought, why the hell did they do this? Why did they make this crazy decision? And then what I found was that the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Canada, a woman named Beverly McLaughlin, who's the first female Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Canada, and who have I met? I met her and spoke with her at a conference, at a law conference, when I was going to law school. And she immediately went to work on the salary for the Communist Party of China in Hong Kong as a Court of Appeal judge for 6 years. And China does not have, euthanasia is still a capital offense in China. So if you did the same thing to a patient, if a doctor did the same thing to a patient in China, he'd get a bullet to the head. He'd be executed. Except in China, of course, they execute their political prisoners, which are primarily the religious cult called Falun Gong. So they type their DNA and then have them all ready to go. And then when they need an organ to be harvested, they kill that person. It's the most ghoulish and evil scheme in the world until now. But of course, Canada has outstripped every possible metric of governments killing their citizens. And since Beverly McLaughlin made that decision, which I believe was done on the basis of interference, political interference by the Communist Party of China, of which she became an employee shortly after for 6 years. I mean, China wanted to have, he wanted to invade Canada, which it's done, and to erase Canadian citizens, which it's done. The people that have been killed by this scheme are almost 100% white, of European ancestry, Canadian-born citizens. So I've been posting these videos just to try and get the word out. This is exactly what Hitler did with the first one. As soon as he was elected chancellor in 1933, the very first thing that he did was he killed all the elderly, ill, dying, and disabled people in Germany. He called them useless mouths. And by the time World War II started, he had perfected a system for gassing and killing human beings on an industrial scale, just as Canada has done. Canada kills 45 people. We killed 45 human beings today. 45 Canadian citizens were killed by my government today. The most evil government on the planet. There's recorded instances of people changing their mind and being killed anyways because they've signed the paperwork. It does not take a judge and a jury. No, it's the signature of any two medical practitioners, any doctor, any nurse. They do not need to know the patient. They do not need to be an expert in whatever ailment the person suffers from. And it could be anything. It could be poor vision, deafness. Now, my brother, Paul, should not have been killed because I had a court order saying he was incapable. And to date, the government of Canada doesn't kill, although European countries like the Netherlands, which incidentally my uncle fought and was wounded liberating from this evil scheme, and who Anne Frank was a citizen of the Netherlands, and the Nazis did the same thing to her. So never say made. This evil government that started out with Justin Trudeau, the most evil person on the planet, with his colored socks, his comic strip socks, and his nice hair. And now we know that he was dismissed from his last position as a drama teacher, part-time drama teacher in a private school in Vancouver. And there's a questions about under what circumstances he left that job. But now we have someone who's far more skilled at the evil arts, and that's Mark Carney. So please share this video far and wide. I think I'm shadow banned when I try and speak out about it. But we're starting to break through. That Tucker Carlson, probably one of the top podcasters in the world, did a 2.5-hour in-depth expose of Canada's evil death cult. You know, I did everything for this country. I've never broken the law. I worked as a federal prosecutor. I risked my life working as a federal prosecutor. I had death threats against me. I've raised 2 kids as a single mom. I was the first single mom to graduate from law school in British Columbia history. I worked as a parking enforcement officer for the city of Vancouver, as a psychologist helping disabled people for the province of British Columbia. And this is the country I end up with. But we're going to turn it around. And if there is justice in this world, Mark Carney will go to prison. I love you all. I'm in the middle of doing my 10,000 steps per day, and I've got to get home. But please get the word out about this evil, evil system. I can't do it myself, and I'm particularly appealing to young men, the young men of military age who would have been like my uncle when he was only 22. He went to war, landed on the beaches of Normandy on June 24th of 1944, and fought his way across Europe and was gravely wounded twice and won the Military Cross. Those are exactly the kinds of people I'm appealing to. Please help bring this evil government, this liberal government, illegitimate government, Mark Carney has bribed or somehow incentivized Conservative members of Parliament and NDP, even NDP member of Parliament to cross the floor so he can maintain this illegitimate control over my beautiful country. This man who had 32 citizenships and 3 passports before he applied to become the Prime Minister of Canada. His wife is from Britain. His children live in the United States. He's the most evil man on the face of the earth at this time. So stand up, speak out, and never say MAID. Never say medical assistance in dying. The word medical is from the Greek verb to heal. And you don't heal anybody by killing them. I love you all. Take care.